Hey everyone, welcome to the Seven Figure Journey podcast. Today, I'm your host, Joel from Elite Entrepreneurs. Today, we have a very special guest, Chase Farmer from Wish. And we're going to talk everything entrepreneurship, leadership development, team development. And Chase has some interesting background and lots of massive successes. He was just telling me about. I'm excited to go, diving deep into that and seeing what gems we could pull out of this conversation for the great entrepreneurial community.
Yeah, super
Uh,
excited to be here and yeah, ready to rock and roll. So you lead the way.
yeah, Chase. Well, why don't you? We start with just you sharing some of your background. I know you could share also about like your prior companies and what you're doing now and where you're at in the journey.
Yeah, man. So, from I started a business when I was my first business when I was 19. By the time I was 32, was doing about $40 million a year, and then kind of parlayed that into starting to build technology. I had no technology background, didn't know how to do any of that. So, my journey was there was a ton of mistakes to do that because most people are just scared when as a non-tech founder to just go out there and try. But I tried, made tons of mistakes, but I was able to escape. Build that company value to hundreds of millions of dollars, and then I started building another company because I wanted to give back, and it would utilize the same principles that I had been building in my last company, which was virtual credit card technology. In the fintech space, I was obsessed with really becoming the whole economy of a transaction. Consumer payments into supplier payments out. So businesses that kind of sat in the middle of that model and took those consumer payments, but needed to pay the supplier at the end, like in Expedia, Booking.com, things like this. And so I basically applied the same exact principles to donations. Me as a donor, I wanted to understand what happened to the money after I give it to a charity or give it to an individual cause or crisis. None of us today can sit here and say that we know what happens to the money after we give it to charity because none of us actually do. And so I wanted to solve that problem, and I felt like I had the expertise to really kind of apply what we had been doing in the business world for the 9 years prior to that, and utilize virtual credit card technology to not disrupt user behavior, but to make it easy for people to give and to receive, and to always understand what happens to the dollars that are being allocated. So that's kind of what we're doing now. But that was a short version of a long story, a long history of tons of mistakes and lots of wins, but lots of failures in between as well. So
You pretty much the top of the game when it comes to entrepreneurship. Pretty much. I mean, like if you look objectively speaking, like you are what many people aspire to be. Like build a massively successful company, be able to sell it, um, and then work on something that you're passionate about, right? I mean, it's the dream, right? Pretty much. I mean, so what? I don't know. What do you feel have been some of like your major challenges and lessons, especially in the realm of like leadership? Having to manage a large quantity of people and be at the top of that and talk to
yeah,
us about it.
well, I think from the outside looking in, everyone wants the results, right? But I think the the work that's required to get results is not what anyone wants to do, because in between the actual results that everybody sees is tons and tons of failures, tons of fires, stressful work environment, a lot of times. And when you're in a startup, that's just the name of the game. It's just like every day you wake up, there's a new fire. How do you put it out? And I think what we do as entrepreneurs is we become problem solvers. If you're a really good problem solver, then you can build a big good business. If you can't solve problems, you know then you're never going to succeed. Because every day it's a new problem. Every day it's a new something that you have to fix and have to figure out. Sorry. Um, my dog's having a good old time here. But I think, at the end of the day, hey, that's enough. Come on, get out of here. Get out of here. Okay, so my dog was having a good time. But so at the end of the day, you have to solve problems. Growing a big team was not something that I ever did before. So it was a one man show when I grew my $40 million company. I had me and an assistant, and I did that company really. It was the Chase Show, and it's really easy for me to manage one person, but you can't really scale a company now. You might say, well, $40 million is pretty scale. I mean, you did pretty well, but I really did that through strategic partnerships and was able to cultivate some really large relationships that made up a lot of that revenue. But when you have a large team, you have lots of different personalities, and those personalities are hard to manage. I didn't know how. First of all, I didn't no idea about talking to engineers. Like engineers are like aliens to me. They're totally different personalities. They they um, they don't. When you're a visionary like myself, you really need a go between to actually help manage that stuff. And I think that's part of the learning experience is what people you need. Obviously starting from the engineers, like what type of engineers you need, what specifically engineers you need. People just don't know how to build things. So what you need there, but the go betweens, project managers, people that product managers, those types of people, why they're important and why they help break down a visionary's request, because we're mad scientists is what we are, and we need someone that's normal to be able to break it down to a team of engineers that can build a square. You have to really be specific about the square that you're trying to build. You can't be, have this massive vision that really has no direction. You need someone to break that down and be able to digestible forms to the people that are building the product and trying to deliver you results. So, you know, there's a lot of stuff that I learned on the fly.
Well, okay, different personalities. I get that. I'm curious about, were there any like frameworks that you utilized to navigate that process? You know?
I think initially, no. So that's why it was madness. It was chaos. We really didn't have frameworks. I didn't understand like that you had to have frameworks. This time around, you have tons of frameworks, for everything, Asana and, you know, just there's so many different platforms that we use to manage the process. And I think that's the difference between now and then is that we really had no process before. So it was like the old West, you know, before the old West, like, when cavemen were around, like with rocks, trying to build a wheel. I think that's what it was like, and we had so many great ideas, but it was hard to execute because the process wasn't there. And that's why what I really learned from that first experience was that process really is everything. Without process, like you really can't do anything. You can't get anything done. You can't scale the company, and you can't execute. So you might actually get halfway there, partially the way there. Then there's another idea, and you're chasing that rabbit. So you really got to finish what you start. Instead of actually chasing multiple projects and multiple tails, you got to finish whatever you have in the pipeline, and then go on to the next one before you start trying to build something else. But also have processes in place, and have software in place that helps you manage those processes. We didn't have any of that when we did that last time, and it was just. And then the other thing is once you have 200 people on a team, or 150 people, or 100 people, or 50 people, and then you're like, listen, guys, now we're going to implement this process. That's way harder because people are used to like, you know, freeing it, like I want to say free ball it, but like, they're just out there like doing whatever it is they do like on a daily basis. And now you're saying, hey, now this is the process. We're going to do this, and I need you to be accountable, and I need you to plug back into this system. We're all going to be managing it this way. It's hard to get the team to agree to this. They're going to be resentful because, first of all, you didn't have this process before. Now all of a sudden, Chase is implementing processes. What is this? Now Chase is the big bag boss. Instead of actually being to avoid the big bag boss problem and resentment from the team, is you implement these processes, procedures, and accountability in the very beginning. And it seems counterintuitive because you're like, dude, I got to build product. This doesn't matter right now. This is like so irrelevant because like we have to get there first. We have to build the product first. But if you don't have these in place, these essential stones, really like when you do get there, you're not going to have time then either, right? Now it's like we got to market, we got to do this. It's like more things are more important at that time. There's never more important, and it seems like and this is good advice from one of my mentors, a guy named Walter O'Brien, very very smart dude, fourth highest IQ ever recorded. He was my mentor for a couple years, and one of the things that he always used to say to me, which I didn't get at the time because I was like, "Yo, we got to go fast. Dude. Nothing else matters but getting this done." It's like sometimes you have to go slow in order to go fast, and what that means is, you know, you have to build these processes. Yeah, it sucks. Yeah, you don't want to do it, but you have to because when the time comes, there's not going to be any time then either. You know what I mean? And so, it's just like building code. When you build code, documentation, like you can't have time. We don't have time to document. It takes time to document, but then what if, Billy, the guy that's doing the code, he gets hit by a bus. Nobody understands what he put into this code. Like you can't ever have single point of failure. And in order to not have ever one single point of failure and the whole thing depending upon Chase, is you have redundancy and you have processes in place. And yeah, it sucks to do it. And yeah, it takes time. But if you don't have this, there's zero chance you'll scale once you finish product. And so there's no scalability to what you're doing. And there's no management or accountability into anything that you're doing either. So it's like, it's critically important. And it sounds counterintuitive because it's like, dude, how we got to do this now. Well, it's like, you don't have time to do it now. Yeah, no shit. But at the end of the day, if you don't do it now, like there's zero chance you're going to scale later and you're not going to have time later either. So, you have to do that stuff, in the very beginning. So that way people don't resent you and you actually can scale.
It sounds like a lot of what you're talking about. Um, I read this book, but it's completely escaping me. It's about like change management, working with engineers and stuff.
Yeah.
The Phoenix Project, that's what it was called. I don't know if you
Okay.
came across.
I
But
bet.
yeah. Okay. Well, I'm curious. Like, all right. So, what? Because most of our audiences like are entrepreneurs who are at the seven figures. We're much smaller teams, right? They don't have. Most of our audience doesn't have 100, 200 employees.
Mhm.
Um, Probably more around like the 5 to 10 kind of number, right? Um, and they're just getting past seven figures, and a lot of them experience like overwhelm, like oh my goodness, like I don't have enough time to spend with my family, or
Yeah.
like everybody's constantly coming to me to make this decision and this and that. Like I'm just like all over the
Yeah.
place, right?
Mhm.
What was did in your journey did you ever come across like that threshold, if anything? And if not, or if you did, what type of feedback or advice can you be?
Yeah. I mean, I think, the problem with, solopreneurs or guys that have small businesses, and, of course I had one at one point, but I think is that the reality is you can do it better than everyone. You'll always be able to do it better than everyone. You care more than everyone because it's your business. So, and you're like, why can't anyone do it? No one's going to dedicate 12, 14 hours in a day except you. You're the only person that's going to do that. No one's going to actually do the job better than you because you care more than everyone else. That's the reality. And the only way to actually replace yourself is to build systems and processes to do that. You know, a system of accountability where you maybe can have some oversight in that process and the final checks and balances of that process. But if you have to be involved in every single step of that process, you'll never leave that business. You will never have the time, and you'll never be able to leave for any length of time. I mean, imagine most business owners that cross that mark can't imagine going on vacation for a month. That's like death. Like, oh my God, I can't do that. Month? Dude, the business would collapse. No shit, it would collapse. It's like, it's because you haven't built processes in place to actually have it keep it going, But the goal is that you have a 7-figure business, 8-figure, 9-figure business, and you can walk away for a month. What's the point of having a business that's doing 8, 9 figures if you can't leave? Like, if you can't leave, like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, you're just creating a job. for yourself that you always have to be at. Like, and the worst part about this job is everything depends on you. Like, and the other thing is that like you can't actually ever take a vacation because you're asking yourself for a vacation, and you know very well that you can't take that vacation because the whole business would be in jeopardy. Like, you need to be able to and that's just a matter. That's another thing to go slow to go fast. Like, yeah, now you did 7 figures. Now it's time to like look at the business. What can you automate? What can you actually put into a process? And who could you put into your shoes that you can train with everything that you know? And a lot of the times that entrepreneurs, we have a lot of this stuff in our head. You know what I mean? So we don't actually write down anything, because we're doing a lot of this stuff, right? So since we're doing a lot of this stuff, we automatically think people just know what's going on. Nobody knows what's going in your head, you know? And you know, in order for you to leave, you or take some time off, you have to put everything like into some sort of framework, like in HubSpot, where people can use it, activate it. Hey, go and so you can see this. The things that you think are super simple are not simple for everyone else. You know, the thing that you think that you do all the time is because you're doing it, no one else does it. It's like, well, why didn't you just do this? Well, it's because no one knows how to do it, right? So you have to give certain instructions to some key personnel so that they can go and duplicate what you're doing. And then when you have someone trained well enough, that you can take that you trust well enough, that you trust enough because they know just as much as you do, they'll never be you. You will always be better. You know, you always give a shit more because it's your business. But if you have someone else that knows as much as you, maybe he's not as great as you or she's not as great as you, but they're close. You just have to. Yeah, this is how they learn, anyways. If you're not if you're giving them the opportunity to try to do the work that you are doing, and they fail a little bit, but like, hey, you can give some correction, and hey, it's all right. You can do this. That gives them some ownership of this, and that allows them to kind of be a better replacement for you over time. Because the more that you crawl all over them and say, hey, dude, you didn't do this. Now I'm just going to do it. You know what I mean? I'm just going to do it because that's what most of us do is we're like, I'll just do this, dude. Like, even though you're on vacation, you'll get onto your laptop and you'll be like, I'll do this thing. It's just take 10 minutes, and then you're on there for an hour, right? And you do like most of the stuff that you ask them to do, and you're like, okay, now I can relax. But are you really relaxing? The answer is no, because you're thinking about like, oh shit, did they do this? Did they do not? Like, and so there's just a lot of that goes back and forth, and until you can actually uh, build processes and help transfer some of the ownership, yeah, they're not going to be you. But you just got to be okay with that, and just that's how they learn, and that's how they grow. And it's not going to be perfect. And it's certainly not going to be perfect initially, but they can grow to the point where um, they actually are close to you, and maybe not as good as you, but they're close enough where you can, go have a vacation for a couple weeks, maybe not a month, but maybe a couple weeks. Yeah.
I'm curious. This is very people heavy conversation, right? So, and by the way, this is gold. I just want to let you know. I think this is really golden, uh, really important, especially like because if I were to summarize this whole conversation thus far, it goes back to what you were saying about slowing down to speed up, or sometimes having to slow down to speed up, and
Yeah.
should those processes and systems are really put into place, even though there may be a dozen other things around to do.
Yeah. There's never enough time, You just got to figure out, okay, when you're gonna like, when are you ready to set up those? When are you ready to spend the time to do it? I mean, it's better to do it when you have just the key people in those positions that you want to start building process for, because then they can help build a process. Then they can feel like they're part of that ownership, and I think that's the key, right? If they don't feel like they have ownership, then they don't really care as much. But when they have ownership of that process, they care more, and they're willing to do that training to other people because they feel like it's their process they built, even though it's not entirely their process they built.
a
Yeah.
good practical, actionable thing would be, for like entrepreneur experience, and that would be something about because the decision, right? So it's like the decision to create time to actually slow down and do that, right? So just hey, okay, I'm gonna put half a day of my calendar, 2 weeks from now or a week from now, to specifically slow down, think about all of this, work on this, right? Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm curious, just to maybe pivot here a little bit. I'm thinking about culture, right? How what are your thoughts on culture? How important culture is, and how you navigated that process, in both in your previous company and now, where you're going with Delicious.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was really bad at that with my first company, and like, what happens is it kind of bleeds through. Like I said, when you don't have processes and you try to implement things, you have resentment, you have all kinds of things. So it's easier to build culture from the beginning. Again, this is another thing. It's like when you lay down foundational rules for how you want to operate the business and um, what you want people to be like, and then just be honest with yourself. Are you like me? I'm not necessarily the best people person, I have to have leaders that are taking on that role. Like I'm more of an in the weeds, like product guy. And so what are you good at? Like, be honest with yourself. Don't try to take on roles that you suck at, because that'll affect culture, right? A non people person that runs culture is not the best person to be doing that. You know what I mean? So I think you have to be honest with yourself and say, hey, listen, like, I'm not the one, but like, who's going to be that one? Like, what leader do I need to have a CEO here running this that's going to set up culture and be, hiring the people and making these decisions and building culture. I think that's the hardest person, well, most of the time, it's hardest for most seven figure, 8 figure entrepreneurs to do because we think that we're the best at everything. The reality is, newsflash, you ain't, and so just be honest with yourself. And I think part of that is setting up the right culture. Is are you the one to be even doing that? Like, you know uh should that be you, or should that be someone else? um what are you great at? And why don't you stick to that and then have someone else in there running the people part if you're not good at it. Like, that's what I learned from the first company, is that, like, dude, I'm not the best at that. So I have someone else running that because uh, you know I'm more interested in product and results, and I can be pretty abrasive, and so, like, me doing the culture and setting that that type of stuff is not. I think that's my best advice for that, is like, you got to set it up early. You got to have a person that really cares um, to be implementing that kind of stuff, and it can't be a person like me that's just I don't have a filter and I'm abrasive. And if I'm not getting the results, like, I could, people could take that the wrong way. You don't want the guy that's leading culture to be that guy. Because people will just grow resentment and not be happy, and they'll feel like I think, the other thing is, founders and leaders, we don't realize how much power we have. And what I mean by that is, you can say something, and to you, it's like, yeah, like, duh, like, no big deal, right? But, like, to them, it's like, oh shit, like, oh my god, like, they could be thinking about it all day long. You know what I mean? And, like, oh my god, like, we got to do this, and, like, you didn't even mean it like that, But, like, then they're like freaked out because they think you are upset about something, but to you, like, you just meant, like, whatever it is, like, whatever you were trying to say. But people in your company take you, like, super, super serious. And I don't think most founders don't, and just leaders, we don't realize, like, how much power we hold when we say things. Um, and maybe you do, and you're abusing that power, but maybe you really don't, and you're just trying to have a conversation and talk to people, but you're saying it in a certain way, and that way that you're saying it is being digested by that other side in a way different way than you meant it. And so you got to be super careful with your words too, I think, is the point that I'm trying to make.
Maybe a little bit when it comes to building that team, right? Within that, because when we talk about culture, it's about everybody having similar or being aligned with the values, right? That you as the founder are putting out there with the founding team. Uh, what did that look like as far as like recruiting people to the team and screening for the right fit, things of that nature, even for the executive all the way down to frontline kind of team.
Yeah. Yeah. So I also realized in my part that that's something that I sucked at. I wasn't good at hiring people in general because I'm a sales guy and like people could say all the right things in an interview. I'm like, dude, you're hired, bro. Let's go. And then you find out they suck. But it's just like they said all the right things in the interview because I'm just like, so I realized that I'm not that one that needs to be doing the hiring. I think for anyone that's building an engineering team, I think what's really most important is that you have someone really good, and that might not be someone from your team because he's asking you to hire his buddy, and you're like, hey, you need if you have front end engineers, UI, UX guys, you have back end engineers, then you have DevOps team, and front end guys. You need someone like an expert that can actually send a test to these guys that they have to complete. Because engineers, they don't have to have the greatest personality. They just need to be great at developing code. You don't need them to be on the customer success team or anything like this. So you just need them to be like great. And I always recommend hiring senior engineers unless you're a big team and you just need a bunch of Tweedledees on there trying to figure out stuff and ask your senior engineers for help. Because that's really what happens a lot of time. You hire cheaper talent, you're gonna get cheaper results. So I always recommend if you have the money, you want to get senior engineers at every level. Senior backend engineers, senior front engineers, senior DevOps, and you need them to run through actual tests before you hire them. And what I mean by that is there's tests you can implement to see how their skill level, because everyone's like, oh yeah, I'm an expert, like what do you know? You're like a visionary or you're a sales guy. You have no idea like how to test these guys or what their capabilities actually are. It's like speaking Chinese to me. I have zero idea. So you need to have a third and then like a third party, actually unbiased third party that's actually evaluating their tests and making sure that they're actually legit. Because if you have me sitting back there judging a test, like I don't even know what I'm looking at. You know what I mean? So it's like have a DevOps guy do a bunch of formulas or whatever those tests are. And there's tests out there that you can actually get. I don't know of a good, but if you look at third party DevOps or DevOps engineering tests, there's tests that you can use for every single type of job, front end, back end. I don't recommend ever getting a full stack because full stack doesn't exist. It's just a lie. They're either good at front end or they're good at back end. They're not good at both. There's not a single developer that I know that's actually excellent at front end and back end. That's a joke. They're really good at one or the other, and they can call themselves full stack all they want, but it's just not true. So, that's what I would recommend on the engineering team. Since I build product, the most important jobs to us is obviously have lead engineers that are building product, but also customer success. That's the most important part of, I think, most internet companies today. It's like, what happens after the sale? How do you get them to buy again? How do you get them to use again? How do you actually make them a more repetitive customer? That's all customer success. You know what I mean? So like, what are you doing after the sale? How do you re-engaging them? And not like the Timu app, which basically just messages you to death to the point where you just want to get the hell out of there. I don't even know how they did as much volume as they did last year. It's insane because their app is the most annoying app I've ever seen in my entire life. I downloaded it and I had to I had to re-exit from that app as soon as possible because it just was sending me messages every 5 minutes. I was like, I don't even know how this app exists. And they do so much volume. Like, to me, that's a huge turnoff. But customer success is everything. If you read that old Tony Hsieh book, I think it was, Pursuit to Happiness or Buying Happiness or something like this. Great customer success book for anybody. He's the guy that built Zappos, but then later died. But really great book, and it makes you want to build a customer based upon customer success. And if you're a service or product based for sure. Most internet company guys are some sort of internet product based company. Um, Great book to read. And I think customer success is everything. And that's really just, you just, again, you have to have the right people hiring those people. And that very first customer success person that you bring on, they got to be a G. You know what I mean? They got to be like top of the pillar of customer success so they can help set precedents for the rest of the customer success team. You can't just hire an ordinary, customer service agent. You have to hire a badass customer success person that's been doing it for a long time at some other companies. They can help build process for the rest of that customer success team. You can't just hire some random. You'd be like, okay, like now let's build the customer success. It's like, no, dude, you need someone that's been doing it for a minute, that's had success, that's worked for some decent internet companies, and have build teams around that person and have them do the hiring. You know what I mean? That would be my suggestion.
Yeah. 100% sure. Everybody who's tuning in and they're still on that journey. These are going to be like major jumps. Um, and maybe just to do a pivot as we come to a landing here. I'm just curious, like, all right, you've built up this massive company, got to this huge level, sold it, and now you're building wishes. I mean, and with this process is I'm curious, like, what challenges are you facing nowadays regarding growth? I'm sure probably you're doing a different industry. If anything, there's like industry specific
Yeah.
problems, but like, um, yeah, I mean, as an entrepreneur, as a founder, as a leader, yeah, what do you, I don't know, yeah, I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we build financial technology. So for us, the biggest hurdles in our space are compliance-based stuff, and it's just because the crypto companies like a couple years ago, like the Sam Bankmans and all those guys, like they created a lot of like issues, right, for newer companies going to market. And when I say issues, I mean like they Sam Bankman and those companies had no compliance in place. So like you know they created a market where banks are just super weary now. It's like now they over compliance you, like to the point that it's just like, dude, like how are people even going to use this? You know what I mean? Like, wait, you want me to run KYC and AML on every single person that comes to buy something? I mean, it's just not realistic, some of the stuff that they're asking for. But I think that's probably the biggest point. But that's not scale problems. I think, you know, um, I think for anybody that's building an app that's moving money around, because that's what I do, um, compliance is heavy. So you have to have a seamless way to do everything. Customer experience is everything. Um, you know, if you have any part of your customer journey that sucks, um, people won't come back. And so everything's got to be simple. You can't change or modify user behavior. And what I mean by that is like I can't ask our whole thing in with wishes is transparency. I can't ask someone to do, hey, like now we're using transparency through Bitcoin. It's like people don't use that. You know what I mean? So people use credit cards, people use digital, like they're used to using virtual credit cards on their wallet, like on their phone. That's not changing user behavior. When you're asking someone to do something out of the norm, like, hey, now we're gonna do it through blockchain. Newsflash, like 90% of the world doesn't use blockchain. You know what I mean? So like asking people to do things that they don't normally do, that's a surefire way to not scale. um, you know, like you'll have like a little niche market where people come and do stuff, but you'll never get real growth. So you actually have to, you have to do things that don't change user behavior. And I think that's the biggest thing that I would say is like when you're trying to change something or innovate something, you can't change the way people do stuff today. It's got to be the same, otherwise like you just won't get growth, and every part of that step in that process has got to be user friendly. Any part of that process that makes them jump off to another screen or do something, it just do something that requires work. Nobody wants to work for anything. So if you make it hard, it just won't work and you won't scale. So it's gotta be seamless, gotta be easy. Otherwise you're dead.
And customer journey, making it as easy as possible. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Um, any other words of wisdom, you know?
Oh man, I mean, I think some words of wisdom is, I think being a founder, doing a startup is a grind. If you're already making 7 figures, then you're well on your way. And the only way to get to 8 figures, 9 figures is to build process. And if you haven't done that yet, because you're making 7 figures and you're making $1 million a year, you can do that without process. You don't have to have process to do that. You can do that as a one-man show. You can do that as a 2, 3 person show. But if you're trying to grow that to 8, 9 figures, you absolutely have to build process. And I think that's the number one thing that I would say is that if you're trying to go from 7 figures to 8 figures, 9 figures, the only way to do that is with process. And process is everything. It's everything.
Cool. Well, Chase, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate your time. We all greatly appreciate your time here. And sometimes, you know what it is. Sometimes people hear things or read things, but all it takes is hearing it from like somebody else for it to all click.
Yeah.
And this could be like
Hearing it a different way sometimes. Yeah. Just hearing it's the same thing, but maybe you're hearing it different, and I think that's what just makes it click in your brain. Brains we all work different. So, hopefully there was something useful from the information I brought to the table, and it can be applied by whoever wants to hear it.
All right,
So
Chase, thank you so much. I'm gonna end the recording, but I'm gonna ask you to stay on just for like 10 seconds while it finishes
yeah,
uploading. Yeah. All right.
yeah, yeah.
All right.
No worries.
Thank you everyone and tune in next time.